Yes, where you're not campaigning or anything.
Exactly. And I actually keep my Instagram private after our adoption because it's just not something, they don't need to see.
So is there any social media you let be public?
No. Not right
That's
now.
good.
I used to have my Instagram public, and I loved having it public, actually, just because I like to be able to tag specifically about my kids mostly. Certain thing, where we get their clothing from, whatever. They're cute, Yeah.
Well, don't
I
you
love to share their stuff, but
don't you do the Enneagram stuff? I see that on your Instagram where like you make them custom clothes or like something like not the Enneagram. I'm sorry, embroidery. Yeah, that's it.
I do.
Enneagram is personality test.
So I do. I still will like share. I definitely
monogram.
Yes,
that's what I was getting.
I still like share my handle and my name and stuff. It's just that I have to accept people if they want to, and I've tried to like think of a way around that, but there really isn't a way around that.
Not really, not unless you wanted to manage a second page that was much more filtered. Which I actually
do already manage a second page just to buy it, to resell my kids' clothing.
So that's maybe adding a third is not.
It's just not, it's not in the cards right now.
That's okay. We're not pressuring you to.
Preston just got an embroidery machine. I think she was showing Eden, but she just got it, and so she's messing around with the program and starting to do it. She's been wanting to get one for so long. So
literally, my husband set it up and taught me how to use it. Like, he's an engineer and his brain just works that way. And so it was like he had to teach me everything I know. But I've been doing it for like 10 years now, and I love it. And I'll do it for friends. I didn't know
you were doing it that long.
Yeah, I mean, for personal mostly. I will do it for friends, but I feel bad charging more than like $10 or $15. And then I'm like, was my hour just worth $15? No.
Probably not.
Probably
wasn't. No. But if you're blessing someone,
if they're wanting something, custom, they can't get anybody to make it, whatever, I can probably do it. So
yeah, that's fun.
Yeah, I think Jordan and I both struggled with that when we were doing work for friends, and like when I had Jordan come and do photography for my wedding, I'm like, I want you to charge full price because you're my friend and I think you're worth it.
Yeah.
And I always got tired of what can I get the family and friends discount? And I'm like, because I'm your friend and I have a business or I'm doing this for you.
Yes.
I feel like you should pay full price. Maybe you should pay me more, actually.
I wouldn't even make him pay more. I mean, you
I'd
love
consider
your friends
it. Depends on the friend.
Well, wedding photography services are very high.
Yeah.
They're very, very high.
Oh, yeah.
So, if they give you a discount, I'm just going to be honest, take the discount.
Yeah.
Take the discount.
Hey, I'm here for it. Yeah. If they offer it, I'm here for it.
Yes, I'm here.
One of my friends does candles, and she'll gives good discounts. They're like hand poured and Troutman soy candles. I love them. They're amazing. But she's always like, we can do it for like 12, and they're like 25 online. I'm like, yes, I will take that for 12.
Yeah. No, it's different if they offer it.
Exactly. If they offer it, I feel like it's
but you go asking for it.
Yeah. Then it's a little different.
That is way different. Yeah. So now we all know about discounts. I don't know. I guess we should probably jump in. Yeah. And talk about what we're here to talk about. Welcome to Resident Skeptics. We're back again. What's new? But seriously though, today we have a pretty interesting story, and I'm saying interestingly with kind of no background purposefully, because I've chosen to have no background because I want to be surprised on camera and I want to have genuine reactions. But we're here today to talk to Christin Burris, mom of 3 kiddos.
Yes.
3 wonderful kids.
Yes.
They're super cute, but her last child is adopted. And so today she's going to share with us her story about how that happened, just all the different things around it. And a lot of it has to do with abortion as well. And so that is a topic that we are going to be discussing. But Christin, thank you for being here and for taking the time to share your story with us and with our audience. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, we're excited to have you. Just kind of real quick, just tell us a little bit about yourself, your family, anything that you feel is important, your dog,
Oh, I do love my dog. Yeah, absolutely. So my husband, Chris, and I have been married, let me think about it so I don't mess it up, almost 8 years now, which is hard to believe. But we met through Campus Crusades. We actually went on like a summer retreat and met there, and just the Lord and our relationship with Christ was a huge factor and still is in our family today. So we had 2 little girls, 2 biological children, beautiful girls that we love so much. And then, adoption has kind of always been something we've been interested in, but never really were pursuing, but we're definitely open to it. So that's a big part of our story. I'm trying to think what else. So my background is actually as a registered nurse and as a labor and delivery nurse. So that's a huge part of where my passion for women, children, babies, where all of that came from, coupled with just my relationship with Christ. And being an L&D nurse, I did see all sorts of, things from the really happy days to the really sad days. And so I was exposed to seeing babies at all different gestations be born. And so I feel like I've seen more than most when it comes to that.
Yeah. Just kind of off of that, I mean, because you said you've just seen all the babies at different stages. Does that kind of affect, where you stand on pro-life and pro-choice issues? Yeah,
it absolutely does. I mean, I think once you see a child born with every little finger and toe and see their every little rib and everything at, a very, very young gestational age, it absolutely affects you. You have no doubt in your mind that there is a baby from the heartbeat. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think a lot of people, they tend to, and this is also on the pro-life side too, tend to kind of complicate it. But at the end of the day, like when you just look, just use your eyeballs exactly. And see. So that's really awesome. Yeah. But in regards kind of to pro-life and pro-choice, you kind of mentioned, your first 2 are your biological children, and then you have an adopted daughter.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So we're just going to let you just tell us how that happened, and we'll just kind of ask you some questions along the way.
Yeah, that sounds great. So I feel like our story really starts with Chris and I moving back here. I was born and raised here. We moved away for a bit, and we moved back, and we tried a church, New Song Church in Cornelius. And one of the first Sundays that we were there, Justin Reeder was there talking to us about Love Life. And at that point, they were a newer organization, and he was talking about the mentorship program that they offer. So when a woman chooses life, they can be matched with a mentor through Love Life, and you can go through training to become a mentor so that you know how to walk through these women with their pregnancies, how to support them, how to be there for them. So being that labor and delivery was my background at that point, our first daughter was just 2 or 3 months old, and I knew I was in a place where I wanted to do that. So we both went through the training to become mentors with Love Life, and from there, we got matched pretty shortly after that with somebody, and she was amazing, and we had the opportunity to walk through her pregnancy from start to finish. We were there the day that her child was born. We were actually at his first birthday party. It was really beautiful, and to watch the church rally around her after she chose life in a really hard situation was really beautiful. So that kind of starts our adoption journey, because in January of 2021, my mom and dad are really involved at their church. They are leaders of a small group there. And my mom gave me a call on a Monday night and said, there's a lady in our small group. She just called me, and she knows of this young woman who is pregnant in a crisis pregnancy situation, and she has an abortion scheduled for Thursday. And this is Monday night, so 4 days. And she said, I want to offer her resources. What can we do to help? This, this friend from our small group really wants to help her and to show her, some other options. And so my mom had reached out to me knowing that we were involved with Love Life. And I think that's one of the beautiful parts of our picture, is that so many things had to fall into place, and so many people had to say yes to what they knew the Lord was asking them to do for us to end up with the story that we have today. So for her friend to reach out to her for help, for her to call me, for me and Chris to have said yes to helping with Love Life, like there's just so many little things that were like just God moments,
Right.
So I was like, yeah, absolutely. I want to talk to her. We're not mentoring anybody right now. I would love to be her mentor and just let her know, here's what Love Life does. It's amazing. You'll feel so supportive. Like, please, let's talk this through. So we decided to FaceTime, and she could not FaceTime with me till Wednesday. So,
okay, this is getting to be a really tight situation.
Yeah. So at this point, it's less than 24 hours before we, from the time that we FaceTime to her abortion appointment the next morning. And I will never forget starting that phone call and feeling really positive, actually feeling like, you know, I was prepared. I knew everything Love Life offered. I knew how great they were. I felt pretty confident, like I can change her mind in the best way possible. You know, I can save this life. And she called me and we started talking, and it was very obvious to me as I'm, you know, given all my points, it's not hitting home here. Like she's not receiving it the way that I'm expecting for her to receive it. And that's when I felt like the Lord really started working on my heart and saying, like, plan B, what's happening here? Chris and I had always been open to adoption for sure, but never pursued it. And as we're talking and she's, you know, saying no to everything I'm saying, I just felt like the Holy Spirit was like, tell her you will adopt this child. Tell her right now, here's another option. And so I did, you know, I said, it would be an honor. It would be a blessing for our family. Like, I wish more than anything I could take this pregnancy from you and carry this baby myself, but I can't. But would you be willing to let us walk through every single part of this with you? I will go to every appointment. I will answer all the questions. You know, I will be here for you. We will support you, and we will adopt, you know, your child at the end of this. And he or she will be a part of our family, just like our biological children. And that gave her pause for thought. And I was holding my breath as I said that, you know, and just hoping that maybe she would consider that. And she, to my total surprise, actually was like, yeah, I think I would consider that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
A lot of emotions in that moment. And I'm also thinking, I need to tell Chris.
I was going to say, I was like, obviously you do what the Lord calls you to do, but you know, this was no, like, there's no discussion. Like Chris wasn't there. So you have to be like, she's like, hey honey, how was work? I just agreed to adopt a child.
Yes. Yes. That's pretty much how it went.
I imagine though it went oh my gosh,
it went so well. Yeah. I'm so thankful. Chris is an incredible husband. He's an incredible girl dad, and he would love to have a house full of children. So I knew that he would be totally open to the idea. I knew that. I just think as Christians, this is just part of what we do. And a huge part of the gospel is the fact that we're adopted into God's family. Jesus literally gave his life so that we could be a part of his family. And the least I can do is adopt somebody's child into my family and treat them like they're my absolute blood. I mean, there's no difference, you know, in that. And that's kind of what I was explaining to, you know, this young woman as we talked that day. So she agreed to let me pick her up an hour later. I picked her up, met her in person for the first time, and took her to the Mooresville Crisis Pregnancy Center where we had an ultrasound.
Oh,
you can't say no after you see that baby. Yes, there's no way you can say no.
Totally.
Like, what was her reaction? Like, I don't know. I want you to feel comfortable with whatever you're saying, but you kind of mentioned, okay, she's hesitant. Did you get a feeling of why the hesitancy was there?
Definitely the hesitancy was there out of just the physical aspect of I have to be pregnant. What will friends and family think? What will coworkers think? You know, she is so, I don't know, what is the word I'm looking for? She is just so mature, I think is the word I'm looking for, in her decisions, and just wanted to do what would be the absolute best thing for this child. And in her mind, bringing this child into the situation that she was in at the time would not have been best for the child. And she truly was thinking, what is best for he or she, not what is best for me. And the world is going to always say that if the birth mom is in a tough situation, that what's best is abortion. And that's where it's so huge for the church to step up and say, no, there's another way. One of the things I think is fascinating is that only 4% of moms will choose adoption. And that statistic is one of the reasons I'm here today, to want to spread awareness to what adoption can look like and to what a beautiful picture it can be for open adoption, for, you know, a young woman to be able to see her daughter or son, to know that they're doing well, to, you know, there's just so many beautiful things about adoption that I think go overlooked. And I know they do by that statistic.
Yeah, no, for sure. And we'll definitely dive into that, because I think that's definitely a topic of conversation we'd want to get into in regards to adoption and the church, and they're pro-life, but what are they actually doing about, absolutely. That's a discussion. But I want to finish this story.
Yes. So I picked her up. Yes. And she was totally open. Like, it was the most beautiful car ride from the time I picked her up to headed to, the Crisis Pregnancy Center together. We cried together. We laughed together. We totally just got to the heart of who I was and who she was and what she was thinking about this pregnancy. And I'll never forget that car ride there. And we went in together, and she invited me to go back into the room with her. And I literally heard the heartbeat and thought, this could be my son or daughter.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Wow.
It was amazing.
Wow. That has to be like just an emotional moment I think for her, obviously, but I think for you, just to be like, this is the craziest thing ever. An hour ago, totally I was doing a FaceTime just trying to convince her to keep her child. And now I'm like, I'll take your child. Mm-hmm. I will raise your child as if it is my own.
Yes.
That's just, to me, it's just crazy. I'm almost like tearing up. This doesn't happen. Why is this happening?
I know.
There's something that just hits to the core of people. It's insane.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so what was her reaction when she saw her baby? Like, what?
Yeah, so
what
one thing
like?
That's interesting, a lot of people don't know, she had actually been down to the abortion clinic once, because they do confirm the pregnancy, but they do not let you hear the heartbeat there.
Yep.
So while she had an ultrasound, she had never heard the heartbeat. There is something so special that happens when you hear the heartbeat. There is no denying that this is a living being when you hear that heartbeat. So that was, it was really emotional. It was emotional for me and her. One thing that was completely crazy that was just another like God moment was the ultrasound tech who was doing the ultrasound was actually the same one who did our gender ultrasound with my middle daughter. And she recognized me, and we were able to connect over that and talk after. And I said to her after, like, she wants to consider us adopting this baby. Like, oh my gosh. And she was just ecstatic. She remembered my family from doing it for us, for our middle. And she volunteers her time at the Crisis Pregnancy Center. So the fact she happened to be there that day.
I was gonna wonder why you were at a pregnancy.
Yes. No.
This makes sense to me now.
She owns like her own ultrasound, like where you can go, for an early gender ultrasound. She owns one of those, and we had seen her for our middle daughter, and then she was volunteering that day there. I mean, what are the chances,
That's really cool.
Yeah, it is really cool. So
it's kind of interesting though, because like you're there encouraging her, and then God brings in someone to encourage you, and it's like that's big right there.
Yeah, completely. And I think what's hard to put into words is how attached I already felt in that moment for me hearing the heartbeat. I mean, I love babies. That's why I was a labor and delivery nurse. And, I already had 2 beautiful children of my own who were amazing. But as soon as I heard that heartbeat, something in me just said, like, that's going to be, that's going to be your baby.
That's your kid.
Yeah.
And so okay. So she gets this ultrasound.
Yep.
She lets you come in. Does she make the decision right there and then, or does she wait? What?
No, she totally waits.
Okay.
So we end up talking for a bit after, and that when we left that day, what her decision was that she had called and changed the appointment. She knew she didn't want to go the next day, but she wanted to take the weekend to talk to some friends and some family. And then make the decision. So she rescheduled the appointment for the following week, like, Tuesday or Wednesday.
Okay. So the anxiety is still there. Okay.
Absolutely. Totally. Yeah. So we stayed in contact that weekend. She kind of kept me up to date on the conversations that she was having and how they were going. And, that weekend, it was actually Super Bowl Sunday, and we were having some friends over, but she texted and said she wanted to meet and like talk about everything again in person. And so we were like, forget it. We literally left friends at our house. My parents came over to stay with our other girls, and we went to meet with her, and we spent the next 2 hours with her crying together, praying together. There was just a thickness of spiritual warfare, honestly, in the room of her being tormented, trying to make the decision that she knew in her heart was the right decision, but was really, really hard to say yes to. But by the end of that weekend and a lot of hard conversation that night, she had made the choice to keep her pregnancy, to keep this baby, and she felt fairly confident that she wanted to pursue us adopting.
Okay, so she was still kind of, so she's like, okay, I'm going to keep the kid,
yes,
right? But I'm not sure about the adoption.
Yeah, and I think she felt pretty certain about it, but obviously there was still some things to consider with the birth father and a lot of unknowns. It's very interesting. At this point, Chris and I knew nothing about adoptions or how they worked or what we would need to do or not do. One thing I think a lot of people don't know is a woman does not sign any sort of paperwork or anything. There is absolutely nothing binding until after the baby is born. So at this point, I was
going to ask that because I've known couples that have followed people through pregnancy and they don't always get to adopt the kid afterwards.
They totally don't. So I think after that day, it became this huge victory of life. And we knew either way that we were going to have a huge impact on this child's life and that they had already majorly impacted us. We knew this child was going to be an impact for the kingdom. And we were just focused on the fact that she chose life and that decision was enough. And we just had to let that be enough for a few weeks. And that was tough. Because like I said, I mean, from the time I heard that heartbeat, I'm like, that baby, I'm attached. I'm super attached. And I was ready to do all the things. I was ready to start the home study that I didn't know we needed to have, but I'm ready to start it now that I know we need to have it. Like, I'm a planner. I'm a type A. I was ready to shout to the world, oh my gosh, we're going to adopt. And that's not at all how it went.
No.
Yeah, because I think one day I was, because we follow each other a little bit on social media, and granted, I don't keep up totally with your life. But one day it's like, there's a baby. I was like, they have a baby? Yes. I was like, how did this, where did this, I mean, great, awesome. But I was like, how on earth did this happen?
Yes. So the first few weeks, the biggest thing we did was just surround ourselves with our very, very closest Christian community who could come beside us in prayer. We met with our pastors at church and they were overjoyed at what had already happened, and we're just, started praying, and some of our close friends and family just praying that the Lord's will would be done in this situation. And we just had to be okay with telling her, like, we love you. We're so thrilled with your choice. And, if adoption is what you decide at the end of this, we are it. And if it isn't, then we're still going to love you and support you. And that was not an easy thing to do for me, especially. Chris is much better at kind of compartmentalizing. And I think he fully believed that we were, in her life for a reason. But I don't think he, at his core was like, is this really going to happen?
Yeah, because it does feel just kind of like this... I guess, I don't know the best way to put it. Almost feels like a movie situation, right? Yeah, where you're like, because typically when you hear about adoption, it's like, okay, we try to foster to adopt. Okay, we're trying to adopt a baby. But like Connor said, it can fall through. Absolutely. And I've had that happen to moms, and I've known them, and it's devastating for them. It is, yeah. It's your heart goes way up just to drop.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's really rough. So I guess I can understand where he's coming from. Is like, is this actually going to be a thing? Are we actually going to get to adopt this child?
Yeah.
There's a lot of uncertainty.
Yeah, totally. Actually, wanted to share, if you don't mind, a little bit from my journal.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
There was something.
Our first journal entry on Resident Skeptics.
So I think, like I said, just struggling with all the unknowns, and I was journaling about it all the time. I'm not a huge journaler, but my mom really encouraged me journal throughout this process because you don't want to forget all the ways the Lord shows up in this. And I was reading a devotion at that time called Focus, and it said in there, we have a certain timeline in our heads or an answer to prayer that we expect, and until he delivers, we feel confused by his plans. But when we begin to take notice of all that he's already doing, the ways he has shown up in our past, and the intimate manner in which he shows up in our present, our eyes are opened and we're able to see his presence everywhere. That's Clea Reeves, and I just love everything that she writes. But I read that on a day where I felt like I wasn't going to make it through that day if I couldn't have answers. I needed answers. I mean,
Are you a planner type?
Yes.
100%. Okay.
Yeah, so she said she was type A.
Yes, type A planner. I mean, my girls' rooms, my older girls' rooms were all complete by 20 weeks, and I'm like watching the weeks fly by, and I'm feeling like we're not getting any closer to like a clear answer. And so reading that and just being like, the timeline's not mine. It's not mine. It never has been mine. If you would have told me I would have even been in this situation 2 years ago, I would have been like, I'm sorry, what? I think one thing I say to people is like, we're not special. Like we are, because the Lord chose us to be so, to have the honor of raising this child, but there's nothing special about us. I would have never in a million years guessed that we would have been in this position. And just reminding myself, he brought us to it, and we're going to walk through it and see, how it ends. So yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I started going to every appointment with her. We got her hooked up, with the OB, and we went through every appointment together. The weeks went by. We did a gender ultrasound. I felt certain it was going to be a boy,
but it's not.
But it was a girl.
Okay.
A precious baby girl. So I went home. I'm like, baby number 3, little girl number 3. But like I mentioned, he's an amazing girl dad, and I actually don't think he would know what to do with a boy. So it's totally fitting that it was a girl. But every, perfectly healthy baby, every appointment is going great, but we're still not feeling certain enough to start a home study. So a home study is a huge commitment. It takes between like 6 and 8 weeks to do it. It's numerous appointments with a social worker where they come out, they interview you and your spouse, your children, and check your home. And it's a big financial commitment too. And we just kept thinking, at what point do we start that? One thing we were kind of waiting for was for the birth father. So even though the birth mother cannot sign anything till after birth, the birth father can sign to give away his rights at any point. So that was kind of something, it is interesting.
It's interesting. Okay.
So whenever he, is ready, he can do that. And we are so blessed with our birth mother and our birth father. They are incredible people, truly. Like, I think so many people think about adoption and think drug addicts or these people that are in these horrible situations. That's not ours. Like, we're so blessed. They're incredible people. But our birth father definitely just struggled with communication. And I think that's a lot of people in this day and age, young.
For sure.
And so we just could not get like a solid text back.
So can I ask a clarifying question?
Sure,
here?
absolutely.
So in order for you guys to adopt, he has to sign.
Yes. So either he has to sign, or we have to be willing to go to court essentially and like fight for this child. And we knew the Lord was not asking us to do that. We knew that if he wanted to step up and be, the father to this child, we were absolutely going to let him do that. That was not something we were going to fight for. So we wanted him to make the decision that, yes, I'm also on board with adoption and I'm willing to sign. So if we tried to complete the adoption without signed paperwork from him, then he could have come back, a year later, 2 years later, and been like, actually, now I want to be, her father, and rip my heart out. That definitely was not something we were willing to do. So we were trying to give our birth mom and birth dad space to work that out within themselves and also with us. So we did meet with him a couple of times so he could meet, us and see our home and meet our kids, and just really talk to him about the life that we would be giving. And we had a ton of discussion about open adoption, like I mentioned earlier. So them being able to see her, have pictures of her, visit however many times, we kind of wanted to talk through all those expectations and what that would look like. But at 20 or 21 weeks along through this pregnancy, we still didn't have any signed paperwork.
So
what would have happened if the mother had signed off but the father didn't want to?
Right. So we were not willing to put ourselves in that situation, basically. So like I mentioned, so if she would have signed but he didn't, he could have at some point come back and said, I want to father her now, and legally taken her at that point. So we were like, no, we're either going to say, he's going to be dad, and we're willing to support y'all through that, whatever that looks like. But our birth mom and dad were not together. So it would have been on just him to, to be a dad, because that's not something that she was willing to walk through with him.
Yeah, I was curious because it sounded like, if they didn't sign off, then you could have the baby, but then they could come back. So I wasn't sure what would happen if one of them signed off and the other didn't.
So birth mom has to sign. You can't, even leave. You could leave the hospital, I guess, but technically you want everything signed before hospital. But for birth dad,
It sounds really, the legality of it sounds really confusing.
It totally is. And it's like, again, we were not planning to adopt, so we knew nothing about it. Thankfully, we had somebody recommend an amazing lawyer. I'm so thankful for him. He made it a really easy process, and he also clarified things for us in our first meeting with him. He's like, this is what you have to have. We're not doing step B until step A. This is where you start. And we knew that where we needed to start was getting that signature from him to feel like we should, financially commit and let our hearts commit to moving forward with the home study.
Sounds like you recommend having a lawyer for this process.
100%. 100%. I guess technically we found out through this, I think you could potentially do it without. I would never recommend that.
I think I've heard of couples doing it without, but I can't imagine trying to learn all the details of all the hoops you have to jump through and all the credentials you need in the whole process.
Absolutely.
What to do, what not to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
So at 21 weeks, you're still don't have a clear answer. So what kind of transpires from there?
So from there, I had a couple of really good appointments with her where we, got lunch after, and she was really seeming wholeheartedly in with moving forward with adoption. I mean, I felt very, very confident from our birth mom. So I was ready to push a little more with our birth father and say, like, this is what we need, please, we're trying to do everything we can do to prepare. And eventually we set a day and a time for him to come and to sign. And he did not show up. And so cue the emotional disaster that was for me.
Yeah.
It was raining outside that day. I'll never forget it.
What a horrible day for it to rain.
It's raining in my heart. It's raining outside. I mean, I just was totally crushed. I was absolutely crushed when I got a call from our lawyer, 30 minutes after. I think it's probably done. I'm waiting to hear. And he says, he didn't come.
Wow.
Yeah. So I sent a couple texts and eventually called, and he did get back to me, and we rescheduled to sign everything. And I decided I would go at that point, just to make sure. I was like, I'm going to come this time. Not that, we drove separate and everything, but I was hoping just letting him know, like, I'm coming too. Let's really try to do this. And he showed up, and it was one of the more emotional moments. I mean, it was emotional. It's very emotional as a dad to sit there and to sign away the rights to your child. And I will never stop saying that we are so blessed by them and the decision they made. We honor them every day because our family wouldn't be complete without them. Mm-hmm. And that was a really, really hard decision for him that day in that room. But, he did everything, and I was elated. I mean, I felt like, okay, this is really happening now. We are moving forward. We contact a home study agency that had been recommended to us, and they were incredible. They got everything rolling. And so probably by like 24 or 25 weeks, we had started our home study.
So you had a little bit of time there.
Mm-hmm.
So how did it go with the home study? What was that like? Did it involve the birth parents?
It does not involve the birth parents.
So if you've ever taken out
a mortgage, just think like along that line.
Like
and
money
times it by 10. No, like all the information that you have to have.
Okay.
I mean, oh my goodness, it's a lot. It's copies of every birth certificate for everybody in your household, marriage license. If you've ever been divorced, thankfully we hadn't, but it's everything.
My family did something similar because I've got a brother who's, it's so funny. It's like, it's about as close to adoption as you could have gotten, but essentially the mother wasn't willing to sign off. He's 18 now, but he came to live with us a couple of years ago.
Okay.
So he came and lived off and on. And at one point we were trying to get the parents to both sign off on adoption. And we did have like maybe one or two visits with a social worker that came through. And I'm one of 8. I'm the oldest of 8. So there was a lot of kids to interview.
Yeah, absolutely.
But the process didn't continue. So it's like, I think I got my introductory to it, but I don't know what the rest of it would have been like.
Right. And my kids were young. So I'm trying to think at the time, my oldest was 4 and, our now middle child was 2, had just turned 2. I just turned 3. So I think it's if they're under 6, they don't actually have to interview them. They just have to be present and be able to like see them interacting and those sorts of things. So that was another thing that was difficult, was when do we mention this to our other children? My oldest is very mature, your typical first child. And I knew at some point we had to have a conversation about that, but I also knew I knew she'd be overjoyed, and I didn't want to also have to, crush my child if something happened. So, so our baby was due in September, and it was in June. Just an opportunity arose. It seemed like the right time, and we went ahead and told our other 2, and my oldest was elated, of course. And as I expected, she started asking so we kept it very vague. We were like, we feel like the Lord is going to bring a new baby into our family. And they were like, a boy. And I was like, we really think it's going to be a girl. I was like, no, probably like a little sister. And, we just want to start praying for her, whoever that may be. They had actually met our birth mom. She had come, regularly by our house. And so they knew her. And I knew that would kind of be an easy thing to explain when the time came. So it turns out it's her baby that's going to join our family. So yeah, we just kind of kept it vague, but they started asking me every single day, is she coming today? Do you think, is she coming today? And I was like, probably like around when you start school. Thank goodness that kind of like lined up in their mind as like something tangible. So I was like, we're going to finish out summer, and then probably around the time you start school, we might get a new sister. So it felt really real at that point that we had told them. We were telling, more friends and family what was happening, and we got a lot of super positive responses. And of course we got the ones that didn't understand. So,
I was going to ask, how was it? Because I'm figuring, I think every adoption story I've ever heard, there's always a few naysayers or at least people that have concerns. So how was that received for you and your husband?
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, overjoyed. Our, friends and family are super supportive, but yeah, you absolutely get the opinions. And I think they're out of concern for like, your heart is going to be broken. Like, there's no way this is really going to happen. There was like some friends who would challenge us and say like, well, is this really best for the birth mom? Have you thought about her? Is this really going to happen? Like, is this best for her? And I'm thinking like, well, yeah, if she chooses this, then yes, this is best. And, we absolutely feel that it was better than abortion. So I just kept, I kept falling back on the fact that no matter what happened, we were going to have to be so content in our joy because of Christ and what he had already done for our family, and that he'd already saved the life of this child. And that was going to have to be our hope, not in whether or not this adoption worked out. But yeah, stuff.
So moving forward, at this point, you've already gotten both parents to sign off.
Yeah, so mom can't technically sign, but verbally. Yeah, verbally she's saying she feels good about everything. And so really it was just waiting at that point. We neared the end, and I was consumed with thoughts of how is this going to end? I was consumed with thoughts of like labor and delivery, the birth mom and I actually started counseling together, which was amazing. 10 out of 10 recommend counseling for everybody, but especially in a situation like this, because we needed to know the expectations going into delivery. I mean, whose room are we going to be in? Do you want us to stay in the hospital? There was so many things that needed addressed. And again, I'm coming from no previous knowledge of this or how this should go. So we started counseling with an amazing woman who had a ton of experience with birth mom counseling, and we counseled individually some and also together some, and wrote through the expectations. Here's kind of what I'd like, but most importantly, here's what she would like. And so I feel like we had a pretty clear picture of what the hospital stay would look like, but I was consumed with the thoughts of how is labor going to happen, and is it going to be the middle of the night? Who's going to drive her? Are we going to meet her there? Who's going to stay with our girls? Like, does she want me in the room? I mean, so many, just how is it going to go?
What kind of counselor did you talk to? Psychologist, or did they have somebody that specialized? Yeah,
she literally did birth mom counseling. That was her specialty, and it was very hard to find somebody. So if anybody needs somebody,
very niche.
she was with Agape Christian Counseling, and it definitely is niche, and I couldn't find anybody. I was actually, this was right in the middle of COVID. I was actually having trouble just getting any counselor to call me back. I mean, nobody was answering, and then I would leave voicemails and never hear anything at all. Mm-hmm. So I don't actually remember how I stumbled upon her, but it was God, no doubt. She was probably the 10th call I had placed, and just, for weeks I'm trying to find somebody and not getting callbacks. And then she was just not only qualified, but more than fit the bill for exactly what we were looking for. So
yeah, and this in the middle of COVID, so hospitals have lots of extra restrictions.
So many, and that was huge going into this too.
If you could even be in the hospital.
Mm-hmm, yeah, absolutely. So, leading, and I'll talk about that a little bit in a second. So we just were going to routine appointments at that point, and she had a perfect pregnancy. I mean, young, healthy, everything had been perfect. We hadn't had any extra things, Mm-hmm. So we went in for her 36-week appointment, and there was a couple things that caused concern, and they decided to go ahead and do an extra ultrasound, and we found out that she was breech. And I was like, look at the Lord, here we go again. Like, my expectations throughout this whole pregnancy were just here. And I feel like he was way up here with everything that transpired between her and I, and just, all of this. So, mm-hmm. Scheduled C-section. Now all the what ifs are gone. There's no, when is this going to happen? How is this going to happen? Are we going to make it? We could plan. It was just like another just answer to prayer, honestly. And, she was completely fine with that. It's not like she was devastated or anything like that. She actually was thrilled with that too, because she knew, okay, now we know when it's happening. Mm-hmm. What we were not prepared for was there was a couple other things going on that made them want to schedule it in 2 days. So now sweet girl is coming 4 weeks early, y'all. And I, even though birth father had signed, and even though verbally we were getting the yes from her, I am a mom. I have been through labor twice, and there was still the doubts in my mind of, we have to still actually go through labor. She still actually has to see her and hold her and still decide that this is what she wants. Mm-hmm. We're not going to be in there convincing her this is what she wants. This has to be her choice. Right. And so we had pretty much nothing when it came to baby items, because I just wasn't willing to go that far. We hadn't set up a nursery. We hadn't bought newborn diapers. We hadn't done any of that. I breastfed with my first girls. We didn't even own a bottle. Like, we literally did not even own a bottle. And gosh. Now we're at this appointment, and they're like, oh yeah, she's coming in 2 days. And I'm like, okay.
I have 2 days to make a nursery.
Literally, yeah. It's funny. My parents had just left for the beach, and of course they're our childcare while we're in the hospital. Yep. So I'm like, turn around, head home. They spent one night there, turned around and head home. Just all the things that have to happen in 48 hours to prepare for a newborn who is going to be 4 weeks early. And I knew there was a chance she could be, in the NICU or something like that. But also they were really happy with everything on the ultrasound. She was, growing, and there was no reason for them to think that she would necessarily need the NICU other than just being early. So, talk about community. I'm so thankful for community. I had people dropping off preemie clothes at my house, boxes of diapers. People had already set up a meal train for us when we came home from our church. I'm so thankful for the ways that we prepared in those 48 hours. And they said, we want to do one more ultrasound before we do the C-section. So come to the office. And let's do that first to make sure that everything is still looking the way it's looking. And then if so, you'll go from here to the hospital. So that's kind of how it looked the week of. And all of my what ifs, how is this going to happen, were totally just answered. And yeah.
It's just gone. And kind of a little off topic. This is a quick question. Her medical bills, you guys covered those?
So she was on Medicaid.
Oh, okay.
Yes. Okay. So that honestly was like.
Yeah, because I was going to say, because there is kind of the concern with, I've just learned having a baby is really expensive.
Oh, absolutely.
It's so
very
expensive.
Pricey.
Absolutely.
I'm like,
very
oh my gosh,
pricey.
it's so much money. So I don't know what her income situation is or what that's about, but so Medicaid,
it worked out. Yeah, actually, and that was interesting because until our adoption was final, our child continued to be on Medicaid through like doctor's appointments, visits, and everything. So that was just like an added blessing. But
interesting.
Yeah. So so morning of, everybody basically is on standby, including my husband. I'm like, I think this is what's happening, but we're going to the office to find out for sure. And they confirmed everything they needed to see there. So we went from there to the hospital. And that was the sweetest morning with my birth mom, because we were just both so excited. We had both said we've been through this journey together through this stage, and we're ready for the next stage to start. We're ready to actually play out the once a month visits we had decided on. We're ready to actually play out me, sending photos once a week like we had decided on. We're just ready to like walk into that together. And we checked into the hospital together. There was a lot of what ifs for Chris and I. We had been told, we aren't sure if you can have a room. We aren't sure if y'all can be in there. It was COVID, and there really was not a lot of guarantees. So we had just been praying, Lord, let them not be busy. Let us be able to have a room. We absolutely wanted to be able to stay, at the hospital with our daughter, and to be able to support our birth mom too. And so we checked in just kind of with fingers crossed. But they let me in there with her, and then her grandmother was there to support her, which was amazing. And
That's
I'm
cool.
so thankful for her. Oh my goodness, she is an actual saint on this earth. I love her to death, and she's part of our family too. And she was there to support her. So we were hoping that her and I would be able to go into the room for the C-section. Typically, just in non-COVID times, there's only one person. So I really wasn't holding my breath for that, and I would have never taken that from her grandmother. So sure enough, they said one person. So we decided on her grandmother, of course, to go back there with her, and they would not let Chris in pre-op with us, which I hated. But so he, in their actually waiting room was closed. So he sat in the car and just like waited for that text from me. That they came, they took her back for surgery, and her grandmother had texted me within probably 10 minutes of them being back there. I mean, having been in L&D, I can tell you it's quick. A C-section, once they get them back there, it's fast. And she texted me about 10, 15 minutes later, her grandmother, with pictures, and said she's here and everything's perfect. And it was just a really beautiful moment for just everybody that loved this child so much to be working together.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And so she kind of gives, she doesn't kind of, she gives birth.
Yes.
Through C-section.
She very much
Kinda
gave
gives birth.
Kind of gives birth. And so when did you find out after she gave birth that she had made the decision?
Yeah. So they brought a sweet little AB. That's what we're calling her. They brought AB back into the pre-op room, and her grandmother came with her as well. And I was one of the first to get to hold her and pick her up and snuggle her, and it was incredible. And shortly after they brought our birth mom back in, they recover in that same pre-op room before they move them to postpartum. And as soon as they wheeled her in, I knew I had to hand her over, and that was tough. I was ready to just run. I mean, that was I'm in love. I am over the moon. I'm holding this baby. I FaceTimed Chris right away so he could see her. And then when they brought our birth mom back in, I handed her right back. I wanted them to have that time together. I knew that's best for AB, that's best for everybody involved. And so they snuggled, and she kissed all over her, and I knew that she loved her with her whole heart in that moment. And I just kind of was content to sit and wait. So they transferred us to postpartum, and that's when Chris was able to come up, and they wanted us to try to give her a bottle right away. So she wouldn't really take it from me, and she took it immediately from Chris. It was so sweet. He's seriously the best girl dad. Melt your heart. But she was super content to be in the room with us, and our birth mom was, and let us give the bottle and have that moment. And probably an hour or two passed, and Chris just dove right in. I was so proud of my husband, because he's typically a little more laid back, and but he was just so what are you thinking? How are you feeling, and what are you thinking about everything? And I was so thankful he did ask, because it was obviously weighing really heavy on my heart. And she was I wouldn't change the plan now. I feel confident. And I was just wow. I mean, it's insane. It is. It's the craziest story. It really is. But we spent 2 nights in the hospital together. We stayed in her room all day. Our birth mom's room, all of us together. She had friends come visit and meet her. We had friends come visit and meet her. It was COVID, so our daughters could not come up there. They were too young, but we FaceTimed with them. And throughout the whole, 48 hours there, she seemed really confident in everything. And we just, it's like you're in this little bubble when you're in the hospital after you give birth anyways, because it just feels surreal, like life just kind of stops. But it definitely felt that way in that moment with all of us together. I knew that this was a time that we would never be able to experience again, and that it was just so healing and so needed for our daughter.
Yeah.
So
it's crazy. I think I'm hearing a lot of 48-hour timelines in here. So when you found out initially about the birth mom, it was 48 hours to the scheduled abortion appointment.
24.
24.
So that one's 24. But yeah, 24. And then, but it was, from our 36-week appointment to birth was 48, and then 48 hours in the hospital. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the way that they do it as far as adoption and signing everything goes, the birth mom has to be completely off of any sort of like narcotics or anything like that. Obviously with a C-section, you have that. And so it was going to be the morning of discharge that our attorney would come up and have everything signed. And it ended up being, it just so happened that her grandmother arrived like right when he arrived. So it was just like her grandmother and us in the room. And it was, again, just so emotional. It was one of those times I could like feel the presence of the Lord in the room with us, because she was crying and we were crying, and we all just love our daughter so much and want the best for her. And to just know that this decision was going to be final and she was going to be a part of our family was just, more than I can even say, but incredible.
Yeah. I mean, there's a couple thoughts that run through my head. I think just as a woman,
sure,
I can't even imagine giving. If I couldn't imagine giving it away.
Yeah, I know.
I couldn't imagine
I've done it twice, and yes, I agree.
Yeah.
with you.
But this is not in any way to hate on her. I actually think what she did was a hard choice to a certain extent. There's a level of selflessness in there.
Oh, 100%.
Where,
for sure.
Where you have to fight your own emotions. When you're saying
completely.
When you were saying that she was like kissing her, and I'm about to start to cry. It's just like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
She obviously loves that child.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like one thing you hear about a lot in like the adoption world is that they're not giving them away, because that tends to have like a negative connotation, but that she like is making a choice to place her with somebody who's going to love her so much and be able to offer her all these things. And throughout like the whole journey, we just kept talking about how she just has extra people to love her. And it's so true. Like truly, we got together once a month for the first year of her life. She would hold her, she would snuggle her, she would kiss her. There are so many things that our daughter needs that only she can give her. And that was something that like I had to fight so hard as a mom. Like the reality of the situation is I can't give her everything because she didn't come from my womb. And so to be able to have our daughter understand, not that she can understand as an infant, but she does, the smell of mom, the heartbeat that sounds like her, all those things that I just physically couldn't give her, that she could give her. And it was so healthy. It took a lot of counseling for me to be able to not feel jealous, to not feel sad that there was things that I couldn't offer her. That only our birth mom could offer her. But I just feel so confident that we're going to raise a daughter who knows that she was so loved, that her birth mom, made the most selfless decision she ever could have made for her.
Yeah. Man, the one thing that when you were talking that just immediately got me was just this community vibe. Like that was just massive, just a huge sacrifice from your church, obviously your parents sacrificing quite a bit as well.
Bless my parents.
They're sweet as can be. I love them, and I think there is a really powerful narrative that tells women, when they're considering abortion, that you're alone, you're not going to get any help, it's going to, there's probably social pressure, financial pressure,
absolutely,
a lot of stuff going on there. And one of the things I hear a lot from pro-life groups, which I admires. Like, you know, we want these women to run to the church before they run to the abortion clinic. Yeah. And I've always been like, yeah, I'm for that. Cool.
Right.
But I just think sitting here with you, and I hope that if this makes it to one woman that's considering abortion, that this could happen for them.
Absolutely.
If they run to the church.
Absolutely.
That the church is going to come around them. And I think I think there was a point where churches were not as equipped to deal with these types of situations. Mm-hmm. I think it's getting better. Just by the shift that I've been seeing lately. You'd have to kind of give me your thoughts. I know you're not an expert on it in any way, but you can still definitely give your thoughts on this.
Yeah, so that's actually one of the goals of Love Life, is to raise up 1,000 house of refugee churches across America. And to be considered a house of refugee church, you do have a specific like training and oath that you take with Love Life that basically says we will care for any woman and her child, or, you know, family and their child, to the full extent. You know, we will love you. We will welcome you with open arms. We will walk through this pregnancy with you. I can't say enough how thankful I am for that and for everything that they offer.
Now, can I interrupt you for a second?
Sure.
For people who don't know what Love Life is, Love Life USA, I'll say, can you just kind of tell us a little bit about what that is?
Here, I don't want to mess it up. Let me tell you what they're missing.
Okay, yeah. See, I can tell she's a planner. She brought notes.
I totally
she brought notes, so we love this.
Yeah, so Love Life is a prayer movement, plain and simple. You're never going to see them out there with signs. You're never going to see them out there protesting. What they are is a prayer movement. So their mission is to unite and mobilize the church to create a culture of love and life that will result in an end to abortion and the orphan crisis. They believe in like a 4-step journey that they walk through with local churches. That's hear, pray, go, connect. So local churches adopt a week for each year for 40 weeks. They will adopt a week, and it starts kind of on Sunday. Mm-hmm. Sunday morning, the pastor will explain, this is our life week. He will a lot of times give a sermon about life from the pulpit that Sunday, and that's when the church kind of hears about it. And then Wednesday of that week is prayer and fasting, and Love Life sends out specific prayer points for you to like walk through and pray over. And one thing that's amazing is when we were praying those for our church for this week in 2022, I was absolutely moved to tears at the thought that for our week, when our birth mom chose life that week, somebody in Charlotte, there was a church somewhere that was praying those prayer points over. They didn't know it was going to be her, but it was her. I mean, that just shook me to think that, you know, somebody was praying specifically for a woman to choose life for her child the week that she chose life for our child. I mean, it's just incredible. So Wednesday is fasting and praying, and then Saturday morning is a prayer walk. You go to whichever abortion clinic they give you the address to, and it is simply you are there to pray. Like I said, there's no yelling. You're actually not allowed to engage with opposition at all. You're just there to pray. Pray for the women in the building to see the Lord, to feel a sign, to, you know, whatever it takes for their car to break down. You're just praying for them to choose life. And then from there, they want you to connect to be able to figure out, so what are you going to do about it? They do offer like an orphan program as well through Love Life. That is a part of is ending the orphan crisis as well. There's over 400,000 children in foster care in America, which is a huge number. And they're committed to helping families see the need for foster care, to foster and adopt, and to walk through that journey of being certified with you if you want to foster or adopt.
Yeah. And I think that leads us, thank you for clarifying about what Love Life does.
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
awesome. I think this kind of gets us into our next portion of this interview. Not that we have this scheduled or anything, but we knew we wanted to talk about this because we had gotten a chance to talk briefly before this interview when you mentioned the orphan crisis and what's happening in the foster care system, where we have a lot of pro-choice people that are like, you know, if you guys are really pro-life, this is what happened with Roe v. Wade, is like, well, I guess you gotta be ready to adopt more kids, and there are some people that are like, yeah, we would really like that. Yeah. And so I have to admit, I'm a little ignorant in regards to the foster care system. I know there's a lot of people that would like to, but it just gets hard to do it. But two, I think some of it comes out of like I think there's probably maybe some genuine laziness as well. I am generalizing quite a bit. So, you know, take it as you will. But that's the one thing that I thought was a fair enough critique. Now, it's not a very good argument for abortion. You know, it's not. Like, well, might as well just, you know, if no one can take care of them, we're just going to kill them, which is really sad. Yeah, it is. But when it comes to, one thing I do know is that I want to say the statistic is for every baby, there's like 2 to 4 couples that want to adopt that little newborn baby. And so for the foster care system, it's a little bit sad, to be honest, because sometimes because they're too old, people don't want them. And that's always seemed kind of sad to me.
So I think one thing that is really tough with foster care is, it's not tough though, is the goal is reunification with foster care. Right. So you have to go into it knowing, you know, you can foster to adopt, but actually I have a really dear friend right now who thought that's the track that she was on, and everything just changed and they're going to reunify with their family. Well, that's amazing. That is the goal. I mean, the goal is that these families are able to, you know, fix whatever was going on, and that the child is able to reunify. That's one thing that is tough about adoption is, you know, it's tragic. It's beautiful. It's so beautiful, but it's also tragic anytime a child is separated from, you know, their birth parents. But I think when it comes to foster care, that's one thing, you know, you're going into it with the mindset of, we are going to be the person who stands in the gap until their family can. So we want to show them the love of Christ. We want to give them everything they need until their family is able to, you know, care for them properly. For when it comes to adoption, if I'm being honest, I feel like one of the number one reasons that people get held up there is, number one, you do have to put in the work. It's a lot of work. You know, you do have to do the home study. You have to schedule the 3 interviews. You have to get your house ready. You have to, you know, do all these things, but also it's expensive. So private adoption, like Chris and I did, was amazing. The way to go. Listen, for anybody who wants to adopt, this is your cue to go be involved with Love Life, or go be volunteering at your crisis pregnancy center. Anytime you can do a private adoption the way we did, you're going to save tens of thousands of dollars. When you choose to go through adoption through, you know, organization that places you there, the reality is, I mean, it's a business too, and there is more money involved. You are going to pay for your birth mom's phone bill, probably for her eating the whole time she's pregnant, for her rent, for all sorts of things that she needs. And we offered to do that for our birth mom because we loved her and we loved this child and we wanted to do those things for her. But there was no extra fees. There was no people that also needed paid because that's their job. So I tell people, you know, if finances are what's holding you back from adopting, but the Lord has laid that on your heart, go meet women who are in crisis pregnancy centers. You know, that's a great place to meet somebody that needs their child to be adopted. It's a lot easier for a young lady to choose adoption if she has a face to put with it. It's hard to just say a couple out there is going to adopt my child. But if you're standing in front of her at a crisis pregnancy center, you're volunteering your time there, and you're standing in front of her saying, I will adopt your child. She now has a tangible face of, this could be the mother of my child.
Yeah.
I think it makes a huge difference.
It does. It does. And kind of in regards to finances, I want to come back to that because I think that can hold a lot of people back.
Absolutely. It's very expensive.
Like, I guess, you know, it's possible that, you know, you're in a financially good place where that's something that you can do.
Sure.
But for some people that are like, okay, it's on our heart to adopt, but we just do not have the money I mean, what have you seen done? What's
some of our
recommendation?
Some of our closest friends just did that. It took them about 2 years to raise the funds, but they did fundraiser after fundraiser. They got a puzzle that had like 1,000 pieces, and you could buy a piece of the puzzle for $5, and they wrote your name on the back of it. It's really cool. So at the end, they framed the puzzle with like glass on the back too, so they're able to see like every person that contributed to their child's adoption. So there is some really great fundraisers you can do. They did a golf tournament. There's a lot of places that are willing to host, things such as that for no fees, so that, you can put all of the money towards profits for adoption. But yeah, again, it takes work. It's uncomfortable. I do believe as Christians, the Lord is calling us to be more comfortable with being uncomfortable. You're not always in a position where you can figure it out right away. But I definitely think if he's laid it on your heart, then it can be done. And again, if you go get involved in the places where these young women are, you might be able to do it.
I mean, that does make some common sense. It's like, I guess, go where they are.
Exactly.
I guess, as simple as that sounds.
Truly be involved with Love Life. If you're a mentor and you get matched with a mentee who's in a crisis pregnancy situation, talk to her about adoption if that's on your heart. I talked to the mentee that I've walked through with Love Life. I talked to her about that, and that's not something she was willing to choose, but there are women who do choose that. So, I think just being involved with what you're passionate about, and if that's to help end abortion, go be involved.
Yeah. Because you said the number was what, like 4%?
That choose adoption, yeah. And
that's when considering abortion.
Yes.
Which is really, really low.
Really low.
Yeah.
That's super low.
Yeah, that's much lower than I thought it would have been, actually.
Yeah, it is.
And I want to change that for sure. Because I think, again, I think that it's a valid concern of, if we care so much about life, we do have people that are they want to adopt, and there's some people that genuinely can't adopt, which, get that as well.
And I think then that's a good place to bring up finances too, is, hey, if you don't feel like the Lord has called you to this, listen, he's called all of us to something different, but he's called you to be involved somehow. Donate. Love Life is opening 5 new locations across America in early 2023. Go donate to them. They need resources. So, if you truly are like, I'm not in a place I can adopt or foster right now, well, go donate then, if you can financially, or at least be praying for them. Every Saturday, they're all across America now, which is amazing. Love Life was founded right here in Charlotte, but there's 5 locations now in North Carolina alone, but there's locations all across America, and, they're growing. So pray for them.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. Bless you.
Did Love Life have any resources to help you and Chris through the adoption process?
Yeah, a little bit. So they actually, we could have went through our, sorry.
No, you're okay. Take a minute.
No, yeah, you just drank some water. You're good. You've been talking a lot too, so you probably need some water.
And I'm a mom, so I've talked, all day to my 3 children in a very gentle tone, though.
Of course,
never
super gentle. No, of course.
But yes, so we could have so if you, in a situation like ours with Love Life, they can connect you with an adoption agency. We could have signed up to walk through it with them, and our birth mom could have as well, and they would have matched us since she had already chosen us.
Okay.
And what that would have done was given us extra support, like for counseling. When I couldn't find a counselor, they would have provided that. They would have provided some of the hard conversations that I had to have with our birth mom, they would have had instead. We just chose to cover certain things for her financially throughout the pregnancy, but they would have handled that for us. But it also was a lot more expensive. So for us, we felt like we were willing to take the risk, like I said, and just tell her the whole time, we're going to love you regardless of what you choose. But if we would have went that route with them, it probably would have felt more certain from the start. So, yeah.
Something I kind of want to jump back to, just for anybody that's not familiar, because I'm not familiar with, I think you said the term was that she was breaching. She had breached. So for those of us,
for the men in the room,
not breaching like a whale. I
think that's beaching.
Yeah. Oh, maybe. So a baby should, in the proper position to have just a vaginal delivery, a baby needs to be head down.
Right.
So breech is when they're feet down. And while you can attempt that vaginally, it's not going to be recommended by any OBs. So typically if a baby's position in the womb is feet down, then you would have a C-section.
And you said that was 4 weeks out to the due date?
4 weeks out to the due date. So typically they would absolutely be head down by then. They would have given her time though to see if she would flip, but there was also some other complications going on. So they felt like she was at a point where it was safer to deliver than to keep her in the belly.
Cool. Yeah, no, I just want to go back and ask clarifying questions.
I appreciate that. I know.
Not everybody listening is going to know.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely.
I think I was actually listening. No, I wasn't listening. I attended a Charlie Kirk event, and he did a Q&A with this guy, and it came up with abortion, and I think Charlie was trying to say, there's all these life-saving surgeries like this. There's something called a cesarean section. And the kid's like, what is that? Well, I don't know what that is. And they had to explain it to him. He's like, a C-section. He's like, yes. And this guy was trying to like challenge Charlie on intellectual level. It's like, dude, if you're going to challenge someone on abortion, you got to know some of the stuff. Anyway, that just reminded me of that. But let's kind of, I guess, jump a little bit to now. Sure. How's she doing now?
Amazing.
Perfectly healthy.
Yeah, perfectly healthy. She just turned 1. She actually started walking today.
Oh, no.
Which was huge.
That's exciting.
Yes. We've been working hard on the walking, and she took off today. She has 2 sisters to keep up with, so she's
a chunkers.
She's a big girl. She is our big girl, and we love her so much. Yeah. That's one thing I wanted to say too, was just watching my big girls bond with her was incredible. It's amazing how it's truly childlike. It was immediate. I mean, they could not have been more obsessed with her from the second we brought her in the door. They just childlike of nothing's different. Nothing, it wasn't this, she wasn't in your belly or anything. Occasionally they will say like, well, she has 2 mommies. I'm like, no, she does not have 2 mommies. But no, it was just so immediate with them. They adore her. They're incredible big sisters, and they don't notice that she's any different, and she isn't, I wanted to mention that throughout this whole time, we kind of felt like the Lord was giving us the verse, Ephesians 1:5, and it's God decided in advance to adopt us into his own family by bringing us to himself through Jesus Christ. This is what he wanted to do, and it gave him great pleasure. And that's truly how it is with us and with our big girls, is that it gave us so much pleasure. It's what we wanted to do. From the start, we knew that she would be the perfect fit to our family, that there would be no difference in, to our big girls or to us in the way that we love her. And I can't say enough how true that's been, and how just, it's interesting because my husband almost feels like he bonded quicker with her than with our other 2 girls, because I was breastfeeding them and he couldn't feed them. And he said like that was such a crucial thing. Like I couldn't provide for our big girls, that fundamental need, and he could for her. So he's like, it just happened so fast with her. And the big girls, as they got older and started saying daddy and started, he thinks that they are just, incredible, and they think that he hung the moon. They're totally daddy's girls. But it just was a little slower. And so it's interesting because people, that's a huge thing with adoption. Am I going to love them the same? Am I going to feel all the same thing? So just here to say yes for anybody who's concerned about those things.
Yeah, I love that. And I think the verse that you shared, it just reminds me that, if we're following God's will, everything that we can do can be a picture of the gospel, like adoption, obviously marriage, even singleness as well.
Totally.
So if we're following the Lord's path, all of it can be a picture of who God is, and that's a wonderful thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I mean, I don't really have too much more.
No, I've got 2.
Okay.
2 questions.
Then you go for it. No,
so
I'm
after
good
the
with
fact
that.
and at this point, so we talked about that there were people that were concerned or were against you guys adopting. Have any of them changed their position now that she's part of the family?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the majority of the uncertainties that we would hear, was truly out of concern for us and how were we going to continue on. We loved her so much. How were we going to fill this void if it didn't work out? So yes, of course, now that it did work out, I think that, you only hear good things truly. And yeah, I think that everybody's thrilled, including us, of course.
That's awesome.
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you guys think that you will go through that process again?
Yeah, everybody asked that. So if the Lord brings it to us wholeheartedly, we will not, unless he tells us differently, we have no plans to sign up for an agency to go through like the adoption process that way.
Right.
If the Lord brings us another birth mom, if our birth mom was to get pregnant again, anything, if he brings it to us, yes, completely. But it would have to be so ordained by him. I mean, I could spend the next 2 hours just miracle after miracle in this story, how the pieces fell into place when we never thought they would. So if he brings it to us, yes. And it falls into our lap like it did again, yes. So yeah, I guess we will see.
Yeah. To be continued,
yeah,
I guess.
Absolutely.
Hopefully we have you, I don't know, might have you back in a couple of years.
I mean,
maybe maybe there's another,
yes.
we don't, no pressure though. No pressure.
Yeah, I would love that. I know. Well, thanks. And I know it's National Adoption Month. So
it
thanks
is.
for having me on this month.
Absolutely.
It feels really special and just bringing awareness to the fact that we can all be involved somehow and that there are so many kids in foster care that need, those people to stand in the gap for them and love on them in the meantime like I said, just getting involved somehow.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I didn't screen this question, the one I'm about to ask you. But if there's anyone that's listening to this and is in a similar situation or is considering something, can they email us and then maybe get in contact with you somehow?
100%.
Great, yeah. We'll screen them. We'll make sure they're real before we send them to you.
Hey, it's okay. I don't mind taking the tough questions too. You know what? I mean, there's a lot going on in our nation right now when it comes to abortion, and I'm always happy to have a civil conversation. That's why I appreciate y'all doing this and having me on here. And I'm open to all those conversations.
Yeah.
We're really glad to have had you on and heard the story. That's just it's a crazy, amazing journey that you went on that you just had a spur of the moment.
Yes. It all just started because I was willing to say yes somehow. So
sometimes that's what God needs is for you to be willing just to say yes. He's like, okay, I'll take care of the other stuff. But that doesn't mean, like you said, it is hard work. And I think to a certain extent that was actually convicting to me because I've spent time complaining about, the adoption system and all this stuff. And to a certain extent, though, it is good that there is work involved because you want to know that the parents that are fostering or adopting are serious about that child and not just, doing it really flippantly.
Sure.
And so I think there's two sides to the coin.
Yeah,
for sure.
I agree.
But I know you don't really have any real social media handles to give us, which is totally fine. But like I said not in the beginning, but just a few seconds ago, if you want to know more about her story, you want to get in contact with her, you can email us at Resident Skeptics. We'll put that in the description. We will also put Love Life USA in the description as well. They do wonderful work and they are growing. They are growing. Which is a great thing. It's huge. And I love their model of no protesting and all praying. That's really different. And I've been there a few times and it's good because you'll have pro-choice that try to throw you're pressuring them. It's like, no, we're just praying, we're just hanging, we're just chilling,
Exactly.
But yeah, I mean that's kind of it. I know I typically Connor does the outro, but it just felt right for me to do it. It felt right, so I did it. I took the reins. I'm so sorry, Connor. I'm actually not sorry.
Oh yeah, sorry.